We're still in a competition. We'll go back and evaluate today's practice today and make a decision. We got to make a decision here soon. I don't know when we'll make it. I don't want to put a timeline on it. But they've both been playing really, really well. You got two guys that have been battling all camp, and today was no different. And guys went out there and battled. There were some good things, some things we got to get improved. But the best thing I love is that they've both gotten better, and that's the whole point of having a competition. Is if you have a competition, it could raise the level of the people in the competition, and then that's what has happened. Both of those two have really elevated their play, and we'll make a decision. He will make a decision here soon.
That is Marcus Freeman, the Notre Dame head coach, at his press conference yesterday after Notre Dame's scrimmage, the final scrimmage of fall training camp. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers today. Notre Dame still does not have a quarterback, at least that we know of. They don't have a starting quarterback. They have two quarterbacks who are really good. They have some other guys behind them who it sounds like have played pretty well in camp also, but no starting quarterback. Were you surprised at all, Jesse, that Marcus Freeman did not name his starting quarterback yesterday?
Yeah, I'm shocked. It's 2 weeks until the season opener against Miami. In my opinion, this week should be game week kind of 1.0, and next week is kind of game week 2.0, right? Like, that's the advantage of your first game of the season. You kind of get that extra game week compared to others in order to game plan, prepare, whatever you want to say. So I thought for sure. I mean, I remember back in the summer, I think we set the announcement by your anniversary or Bailey's birthday, which is 8/7 or 8/8. We thought it would be that end of the week, or I thought it would be that end of the week, and here we are on August 19th, and we still don't have a starting quarterback.
I tell you what, after all the things that were either reported or rumored, whichever you put more stock in, by the end of last week, by Friday, there was, as we said on Friday's show, there was a lot of smoke that was brewing and coming out about this guy's going to be the guy, this, whatever was going to happen. Then it didn't happen. And then, of course, we knew that there was a scrimmage on Saturday, and that would come before Marcus Freeman's press conference. So I will say this. Going back to, like your timeline, the original timeline, I did think we would have a starting quarterback by yesterday. But if we rewound this to Friday and then you start stacking things up, the fact that there was going to be a scrimmage and you knew that they were going to have to look at the film and ultimately make their final decision and all these different things. Going into yesterday, driving over to Notre Dame Stadium, getting ready for the press conference, walking into the press conference, I was not surprised ultimately as of yesterday, like knowing everything that had kind of led up to it. I was not expecting him to name a starter yesterday. And as he said, he reiterated his, I don't want to put a timeline on it, but the problem is, as of today, you're 13 days away. You're less than 2 weeks away from the season opener. So whether you want a timeline or not as the head coach, there is an official timeline on this thing. Sooner or later, he's going to have to name somebody. Again, I wasn't totally, going into yesterday, not surprised. If we rewound it to the start of camp, I would have thought we were going to have a starting quarterback by now.
Does it make you feel any better or worse that one hasn't been announced?
I think if you polled fans, they would probably say worse, because there is a general unease about this whole thing with what's going on right now. Again, you're at the point, because you do have a hard deadline. You've got to name somebody. Like, one of these guys is going to have to be it. And it sounds like, again, like based on things that we've heard, there might not be a complete consensus, in behind closed doors as to, who everyone thinks the guy should be. And I think that there are pros and cons to all of that as well. How about you?
So, like, to me, this either goes one or two ways. One, you have two really good quarterbacks that are just competing, and it's naturally hard to pick between the two. That's the thing that I want it to be. The other half of it is you don't have anyone creating separation, and you could have two quarterbacks who potentially just aren't ready yet, right? And the hardest part is they're going to open with some of their toughest games of the season. So not being ready yet really isn't an answer, in my opinion. I'm a little personally upset. I think that
Ooh, okay.
you need to, by this point, again, this is basically a game week, in my opinion.
Well, today, we'll hear this in one of Marcus Freeman's. We've got a lot of different audio from yesterday's press conference. By my count, there were, I think, at least 9, if not 10, of the 24 questions that were asked of Freeman that were about the quarterback situation. And he talked about the fact that today was the last day where you're basically going, any kind of good on good. And tomorrow begins, like, you're going up against scout teams as opposed to the number 1 offense versus number 2 defense. Tomorrow is Miami prep begins. So it does feel like, to kind of what you were leading to, you need to know who that guy is going to be with Miami in mind now, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying, get over it, or there's really no reason to have the announcement made. I'm just not buying that. I think that's everyone's coping. It should be announced by now, unless you're Michigan and Jim Harbaugh and you want to wait until the very first, snap of the game. There's really nothing to hide, in my opinion. None of these quarterbacks have tape out there. We don't know how the offense is going to look and how Denbrock has tailored it around their skill set. So it's not like you're giving anything to Miami early on. I want the team to be on the same page moving forward as one unit and understand who their leader is on offense going into such a pivotal game to start your season.
I don't think it's important that it's actually announced. I think the only important thing is that they know who it is, whether it's today, tomorrow, the next day. As long as they know who it is. We'll have a press conference, by the way, a week from tomorrow. Typically game week, Marcus Freeman's press conferences are on Mondays, but because next weekend, or not next weekend, the week Notre Dame plays in 13 days, the 31st is a Sunday, Labor Day weekend, and so they are shifting all the media back a day to make basically Tuesday is Monday that week and that kind of thing. So the next opportunity we have to talk to Marcus Freeman will be 1 week from tomorrow. And I guess, we can shift our odds now, our betting lines as to whether or not he lets us know, or if maybe social media lets us know in advance. I believe it was Jack Cohn in 2021. Before Jack Cohn, it was I think it was a Saturday, and we were going over there to talk to Jack Cohn and some coaches and other players. And I believe it was announced on social media, if I remember right, that Jack Cohn was going to be the starting quarterback, before there was actually a press conference or any of that kind of stuff. So
to me, it just boils down to confidence. This is a team coming off a national championship. Everyone knows that the starting quarterback
championship game. They didn't win a national championship.
Yeah, understood. But it still shows, in my opinion, a lack of confidence.
I don't think it shows a lack of confidence. I think that
it's very clear one person wants one thing and he's not getting the feedback that he wants. So if you're the head coach, put your foot down.
Okay, well,
I think I have PTSD from the prior coaching staff and seeing how these things have affected seasons past.
Just when we thought we were past BK PTSD, it rears its ugly head once again, 3.5 years later, as Marcus Freeman prepares for year 4. And, it does, this is the same kind of thing that happened in 2016, the kind of stuff that you're talking about with Malik Zaire and Deshaun Kaiser, where they ended up going with co-starters, and that was a mess. And, we'll get into some of that in a little bit, in terms of, do you think that they should go that route potentially? But to your point, the decision at the end of the day comes down to one person and one person only.
I mean, a lot of decisions I make, I involve people. I believe we have the best staff in America, and so how do you not take some of their opinions into account? Like we'll talk, and at the end of the day, I have to make a decision, and it will be my decision. Right? I'm not passing this along on anybody else. I have to make a decision, but I will take into account like I do all my decisions, the coaches, and then we'll tell the players, and we'll move forward.
Marcus Freeman, the buck stops with him. Joe Allen says it makes Freeman look indecisive. Yes. The fact you agree with that?
Yes. At this point, I think you have to be decisive. Knowing the context of the season. Do you want to
pull the trigger too early, though? Do you want to pull the trigger too early, or do you want to wait and make sure that you're making the right decision? Do you just want a decision, or do you want the right decision? Personally, I think the right decision is what you have to wait on.
No, I want the right decision, and I want this decision that makes the most sense for team success. I don't care who it is. If I was the first person to know, the last person to know, I just think that at this point, everyone should know. And it's not a me or they or who. It's a matter of, I think everyone should kind of know at this point. And I do think that being indecisive can be a not a great look. And then I think if things start to go wrong, that leads to more questions from others of, did you make the right decision because you were so indecisive early on?
Let me ask you this. Is this the biggest decision of Marcus Freeman's career? I was trying to think of some other decisions he has had to make, like going for it on fourth down a couple times against Ohio State in the home game a couple of years ago. Really, were there any big decisions that he had to make during the playoff run? Like maybe the decision to,
some fake special teams play.
That's what I was going to say, the fake punt, if that's what you want to call it, where they didn't punt and they drew Georgia offsides, just the decision to do that. Like this is it, because he has been able to go out and handpick experienced quarterbacks each of the last 2 years with Hartman and Leonard. And before that, obviously, his first season, they opted not to go to the transfer portal, and they decided to stay within. I think that you could say that was potentially a big decision. Craig says hiring decisions. I think that that's true. I mean, he's had to make, like Chris Ash, I think would qualify as a big decision. Getting Mike Denbrock was a big decision. But basically anyone that he's hired have been big decisions. It was big to go out and get Mike Brown after firing Chancey Stuckey. The decision to fire Chancey Stuckey. Craig, you got me thinking about all this now, just organically. It's all flowing from the top of my head. I mean, those were all big decisions. But I think this is it, because you have a national championship caliber roster, at the very least, a college football playoff roster on your hands. And the only thing that they really don't, there are a couple of decisions that they still have to make. Who's going to be the right guard? Exactly. What are who are the safeties going to be who play next to a Don Schuler? Those kind of things. But this is a big one. The head coach and the quarterback. Those are the two most high profile people in any football program. And so I think that this is with the kind of roster that they've got, and a team that has every right to think that they can at least get back to the quarterfinals or semifinals of the college football playoff this year with the right guy driving, the car out there on the field. I think this is probably the biggest decision that Marcus Freeman has had to make so far.
This is definitely his biggest personnel decision. I don't know about, the grand scheme of things or, bigger picture stuff, but personnel position wise, this is 100% the biggest decision that he's made. Again, I'm just so caught up in what this says about the quarterbacks, and if you haven't made a decision yet, what those repercussions might mean.
I think it means that you have two really good quarterbacks with slightly different skill sets and with slightly different mentalities, because you've got a guy like CJ Carr who is very instinctive. His ability, the touch that he has, his ability to anticipate what's going to happen on the field, all those different kind of things. But what have we seen that started in the blue gold game a few months ago that reared its head as soon as training camp opened? I think that maybe sometimes he is so confident in both his abilities and decision-making that sometimes you get an interception like you have in the blue gold game, where he's, where maybe you just need to throw it away or eat a sack, live for another play, where he's forcing it into coverage, against better, like his better judgment, because like he's so used to being able to place the ball exactly where he wants with pretty much pinpoint type precision. But it sounds like maybe some of that aggression has worked against him as this competition has gone on this fall. Whereas you've got a guy like Kenny Minchey, who might not have the same level of anticipation, doesn't quite read defenses the same way that CJ Carr, doesn't quite process as quickly as CJ Carr, but he hasn't maybe made, as many of those fatal flaws over the course of this competition either. So I think that you've got two guys with really great skill and just enough differences between them that it's like, which guy do I want to go with? That's the decision Marcus Freeman has to make now. I think it's a tough one.
Yeah. So to go back to the regular ultimate decision clip that you just played, soundbite, do you believe that this should be 100% Marcus Freeman decision, knowing his background and knowing the stakes of what the offense can and should be this season?
I mean, it's a good point because he is a head coach with a defensive background. Joe Allen in the YouTube chat asked, shouldn't he take in Denbrock's choice on who he wants to run his offense? I think he has to take the input of Mike Denbrock as well as Gino Guidugli, obviously the quarterback's coach. But at the end of the day, it's not Mike Denbrock's name on the marquee. The bottom line is not Mike Denbrock. He is still the offensive coordinator. Marcus Freeman is the head coach. And so Marcus Freeman, and it sounds like this is what he has done, he needs to take the input of those guys and trust his own eyes as well. He needs to take their input, be willing to receive it, and then weigh all that. But because he is the head coach, regardless of what his background is, the buck stops with the head coach, and the head coach ultimately has to be the one who makes the call. You're shaking your head. You agree with that?
I agree with that part. I just, there's a lot. I don't know if I'm just, the Cubs got into me again today, but I'm just playing devil's advocate on a lot of stuff.
It all comes back to the Cubs. Jesse's going to be in a mood whenever the Cubs can't, hang with the Brewers, which is pretty much every day these days. But, that's just where he is right now. I think a lot of other Cubs fans feel the same as you right now.
So the thing that we talked about was how, young and inexperienced these guys are. And I guess this is kind of the point that I'm going to probably be coming back to a lot of this show. Wouldn't you want to give whoever your starter to be that extra week to get into a game routine, to get into a rhythm with the rest of the offense? Like both the offense has seen, basically split reps all spring and fall camp, spring, summer, fall camp. To me, again, young, inexperienced quarterback, I want to get him in there. I want to get him comfortable a week before actual game week. I want the offense to understand who their quarterback is so they can start to build the chemistry leading up to the game. I guess in my opinion, there's no disadvantage at this point to naming a starter, but the longer it waits, then it becomes a disadvantage. And I just don't want to see that keep snowballing. And I know you said that, they're probably approaching the real hard deadline today, tomorrow. So I guess it's kind of a wait and see here. But right now, I just see this as a disadvantage more than an advantage.
Yeah, so we've got some people chiming in on, what we were just talking about with whose decision, whose choice this needs to be. And this is kind of like, I'm thinking the same thing, Tommy. He says, Jesse really believes that the team can't know unless the public knows. Like, again, there's a difference between them announcing it publicly and obviously announcing it behind closed doors.
I don't think they've done either.
No, I don't think that they have at this point either. But you don't get how hierarchy of coaching works if this is your take, because Scott says he should defer to his OC, and so long as he sees sense in what Denbrock wants, he needs to let his OC do it, especially if his OC and quarterback coach agree. ND Forever 72 says, no, it shouldn't be. Denbrock's input should be highly valued and considered. I still think if he goes against Denbrock's choice, it's problematic going forward. He's one of the best OCs in the country. So do you agree with those sentiments?
I think you should be on the same page as your OC at the end of the day. I think the decision should be considered. I do believe it is the head coach's decision. He's the guy ultimately being judged at the end of the day. He's the one who hires and fires OCs and defensive coordinators as well. I think you're asking for a relationship to go sour if you and your OC don't agree and you start experiencing problems, and it's like, well, it opens the door to conversations and kind of, I think, bitter exchanges is what
it can be. It can be, but it also depends on what the relationship is. And remember, these guys go back together to Cincinnati, so they've been around each other for a while. Denbrock obviously made the decision after turning down the opportunity to get a big fat pay raise after producing a Heisman Trophy winner and the number one offense in the nation at LSU. He came back to Notre Dame because he wanted to be here, and being on Freeman's staff was part of that. I agree. There can be some of that headbutting, but again, that happens sometimes. And I think that ultimately part of how that's going to work out going forward is still going to depend on the relationship that those guys have with each other. And as we know, Marcus Freeman is a relationship guy, whether it's with the assistant coaches or with the guys on the roster. But like Scott says, in what universe has Marcus Freeman's career prepared him to evaluate which quarterback will perform the best on game day? Well, he was a linebacker, so he literally stood 10 feet away from quarterbacks for most of his career at Ohio State and what time he spent in the NFL. So it's not like he's never, laid eyes. Like, his job was defending quarterbacks and running backs and offensive linemen, like he has watched it from the other side, even though, he hasn't been down in the dirt specifically preparing quarterbacks to get ready to go. He's been there and he's done it. I do wonder, for like the people saying, well, this should all be the offensive coordinator's decision because he's the guy running the offense, not the head coach. I do wonder how much of that has to do with you want it to be one guy and maybe the head coach is leaning towards another guy, like you think that the head coach is leaning towards another guy. Like, how much of that is coming into play as you say this?
I'd say it's a factor.
Yeah. That's what I wonder. All right. We're obviously going to continue this conversation, but we also have to take a break first because we do have a few breaks in this hour, and I tried to move some stuff around, tried to make it as accommodating as possible. So after a timeout, we'll hear more from Marcus Freeman. We'll continue the conversation on what he should or shouldn't do as it pertains to this quarterback decision he's got to make. CJ Carr, Kenny Minchey, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. I'm Sean Stiers, joined by Jesse Stiers. We're talking Notre Dame quarterbacks. Kenny Minchey-CJ Carr. Notre Dame doesn't have a starting quarterback announced yet, publicly yet. Scale of 1 to 10. What are the chances they know behind closed doors as of today? What do you think?
7.5 out of 10, leaning towards they do know.
Okay. I'm at maybe a 6.
Ooh, so you're actually lower.
I mean, everything we hear says that both of these guys have the respect of the locker room. So it's, like, I don't think that's going to be an issue, like losing the locker room, depending on which guy you end up going with. Bobby O'Shea says 11. Tommy says 10 and 7/8. Facilitate says 0%. Scott's at a 6-7. I am Tenzin, the son of Ang, says 11-10. Oh, man.
Do you think it's one of those things where he wakes up one day and he's like, man, CJ Carr looked really good today?
I think
and he wakes up the next day and he's like, man, Kenny Minchey didn't turn the ball over, but he also made some really nice, consistent plays for us.
Right.
Like, do you think the internal dialogue is heavy for him right now? You think he's got one of them sitting on each shoulder and he's like, I really can't decide which guy I want to go with?
Well, I mean, if you're a Champions Lunch subscriber at IrishBreakdown.com, you know that there was some stuff going on last week, and we were hearing one thing, and then everything kind of got put on pause for a little bit. It was interesting. I'm gonna go ahead. Well, I'll just go ahead and play this next one. Marcus Freeman, at his press conference yesterday, was asked if there is an advantage to this competition going on this long.
Yeah, no, that's the advantage is our offense is practice. The whoever are the ones have practiced with both quarterbacks, and they're comfortable with both quarterbacks. And so sometimes you don't get that when you have a starter and a backup. All of a sudden that backup comes in with the ones, and there's a little bit of confusion in terms of they don't understand how he does his cadences, the collapse, or whatever we end up doing. And so I think it's a benefit. I'm always going to look at it as a benefit no matter what the situation is.
So, I mean, Marcus Freeman, that's kind of the way he always frames things. He's always going to frame it as a benefit and advantage for his team, just like the thing about the college football playoff and playing a home game last year and, all those, not having a bye and all that kind of stuff. But like, if you look at this outside looking in, is it a bad thing that it has gone on this long and there's no clear-cut winner with 13 days to go until the opener at this point?
Yeah, I think I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. The hope is iron sharpens iron, right? Like the fan in us wants the situation to be, well, both guys are great, and it's just so hard to decide which guy is going to be more great and do better things for this team. The flip side of that is, well, both guys are, doing okay, just about average, but no one's really doing enough to kind of separate themselves or get their head and shoulders out of the water. Instead of, doggy paddling, they're full on swimming now. But, so, I mean, at the end of the day, is there really some huge, glaring, big disadvantage? No, I don't think so. And I think it's quite hilarious that basically Marcus Freeman's response was, well, if both of these guys are good, then both of them could step in and the offense really isn't going to lose any pace. Like that's basically what his response was, that if one guy needed to come in, it's not like the offense would drastically change. They could just pick up where the other guy left off and things would just be, running as smooth as possible. Right. So,
right.
How much of that Kool-Aid I'm sipping, I don't know 100%. But again, there's no real glaring disadvantage. I think it kind of just comes down to some of the smaller stuff that we were talking about. Does you want to be confident? Does this make you look indecisive? What does this do for team chemistry? What does this do for your preparation for Miami? That's the sort of stuff where I think we're encroaching, but we're not 100% there yet.
Yeah. Again, I think It only gets to a disadvantage once you get past that. Okay, now we're on to Miami. We're game planning specifically for the Miami Hurricanes, which again, as of today, is 13 days away. Which here's some math for you, Jesse. You'll be impressed by this. Tomorrow it'll be 12 days until Miami. So I know, right? Like, see how I did that? But tomorrow, again, being at least a soft deadline, because as Marcus Freeman said, the game planning starts tomorrow. They'll start going up against the scout team. The quarterbacks will start going up against the scout team defense. The number one defense will go up against the scout team offense. So it's not like going ones versus ones, twos versus twos and that kind of stuff anymore. Now you're specifically getting ready for an opponent. Daniel says, show my work. I refuse to show my work. So another question to Marcus Freeman. There have been many questions to Marcus Freeman. Did he think that he would know who the starter would be by now?
Never put a timeline on it, I mean, I didn't, because of why? It's going to make you frustrated if you do that, but I said, hey, as soon as one clearly says he should be the starter, then we'll make a decision. Now, we have to make a decision before we play, and we will, but there hasn't been that moment where this guy said he is clearly the starter. Let's just leave him with the one. They've been battling. They've both been doing a really good job.
All right. So, and I agree with what he's saying. If you he has said all along, we're not going to put a timeline on it, because once you do that, and then you go past, whatever that date is, then you do start getting yourself into, you box yourself in. It's like if you've watched Breaking Bad, for example. You watch Breaking Bad, right? JC is shaking his head. I don't know what to do with you anymore. So at the beginning of the final season of Breaking Bad, Walt pulls into town and he's got a freaking machine gun in the trunk of his car. And so the problem for the writers of the series was they didn't exactly know what he was going to do with that machine gun. So it took them the course of the final season, as they're writing their way along, to figure out what that machine gun was actually going to be used for. And then, you find out by the end of the season, obviously, but they boxed themselves into a corner to an extent. And that's kind of what I was saying with that. But my question for you, with the competition being this close, there are plenty of people who think that they should go into the season just splitting reps and or alternating series against the Miami Hurricanes in a real game. Are you in or you out on that?
That's the biggest thing I want to be out on, is I don't want split QBs, or I don't want a QB being pulled because he has a bad drive or a bad quarter. You need to announce your starter. You need to pour your confidence and into that starter. And just at that point, you've made your decision. Maybe you reevaluate after 3 or 4 games, but if you're in the business of being honest and fair and a true competition, then reward the winner and let things play out, right? And that's the thing too, is at the end of the day, this team has so many factors of safety built into it. They have running backs who can lighten the load. They have a great defense that can lighten the load. They get creative on special teams. There are so many factors out there that provide insulation and safety for whoever this quarterback is going to be. So again, it's not like they're just going to throw them to the wolves completely, right? And I think that's part of this decision as well, is, who fits the overall picture, right? Who doesn't just fit it for maybe a week or two, or who is the fit for the whole season, and how can they continuously make this team better?
Bobby in the YouTube chat says, yo, I haven't seen Breaking Bad either. Thanks for ruining it. I didn't ruin anything. And by the way, it's not like I didn't give you 15 years, to go watch it, but they figured out what to do with the machine gun. I didn't say what they did with the machine gun. So come on, take it easy a little bit there. Yeah, I am completely out on any kind of splitting reps at the quarterback position. The old John Madden saying, as Anthony says in the YouTube chat, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. If you have two, you have none. That is the last thing that that I want to see them do. It didn't work out in 2016 with Kaiser and Zaire, and it just does not work out in general, because once you're out there on the field at the quarterback position, I mean, this happens at other positions, I think, sometimes too, but especially I think it's heightened at the quarterback position because of the emphasis that is put on it. You're just looking over your shoulder all the time. As soon as you make a mistake, you're looking toward the sideline. Am I going to get yanked out of here? If this series doesn't go bad, then, this guy's getting in on the next series, and then he goes and scores a touchdown. I think that you ultimately create much more divisiveness when when you try to make something happen like that. It was one of the many things that went wrong in 2016. That obviously was far from the only thing. The defense played a big part in that as well, but completely out on quarterbacks alternating series, doing any kind of split in an actual game. But it does kind of beg the question, because like college teams can obviously do their scrimmaging and they, do their closed door scrimmaging and all that different kind of stuff. NFL teams, though, are out there playing preseason games. You get exhibition games that don't matter, but you can go up against another team and find out a little bit more about all of your different personnel. Like, I've always thought that even if you're going to make it a closed door, type scenario, that there would be a lot of benefit in colleges. Basketball plays exhibition games. I think that there would be benefit in colleges being able to play one exhibition game as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you have a situation like this, it's like the more you can simulate game reps, the better. And game reps that isn't going against your stingy old defense, like you have been for the last 8 weeks or whatever it's been. So, yeah, I think that any new fresh blood, and especially in a competition, is highly desired.
Jesse, you led me right into this next one that was expertly done. As we go into this next one, how the defense impacts not only a decision but a competition like this.
I think they're seeing different things defensively. Our defense isn't exactly what Miami's defense is going to be. You don't know what they're going to be. Obviously the coordinator was from Minnesota, so but they're learning football. Right? As we get out of today and tomorrow, we'll start truly working scout teams and truly working Miami game plan. But today was all about learning the game of football, and they're learning a lot because, they're seeing a lot of things defensively, and they got to be able to process the checks and, the downfield decisions. And so I think it's a benefit for them.
That was the cut where he mentioned, that Miami prep is coming up. But I think that going up against the defense that, we only got to see the first actual day of training camp, but from everything we've heard, that Notre Dame defense has made it pretty tough on these guys throughout camp. Do you think that ultimately long run, it might make the decision harder right now for who they're actually going to pick, but for the long run, do you think that that's going to work out better for Notre Dame because they had to go up against such tough competition all camp long?
100%. I'm going to paraphrase Michael Jordan here, but basically, practice should be harder than games at the end of the day, right? And not only, that's not just exclusive to Michael Jordan, but if you can simulate more intense and harder environments in practice, you're going to walk into a game as a first-time quarterback on the road against a ranked opponent and say, what do I have to lose here? I've gone against better, right? If I can do this against better, why am I going to be worried or maybe have self-doubt in their abilities? So again, the more you can simulate high leverage situations going against better talent, better opponent, then yeah, it's going to do nothing but help that quarterback's confidence once they actually step into that environment and have to make, game reads and game throws.
Salty says, just bite the bullet, name Buckner. the starter. Apparently, he had a good scrimmage yesterday.
Mr. Buckner?
Mr. Buckner did. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, let's just put it out there right now. Miami's defense was atrocious last year, and you can't convince me that a portal defense in a spring and fall camp are magically going to get themselves on the board. I'm more worried about what Miami can do offensively. I think that's the bigger question. And this game could very much play out like it did against Texas A&M to open last season. A stalemate where a really good offense, or sorry, you have a defense kind of, holding a good offense in Miami. And then you might have an inexperienced young Notre Dame offense that just simply kind of, runs their head into a wall a little bit. And again, I think that's why no matter who the quarterback is, you're going to see a heavy dose of a guy named Jeremiah Love.
And Jadarian Price, for that matter. But yeah, both of them. And, I know that that's not going to make a lot of fans very happy, but think about the game plan that Marcus Freeman had to open his career when Tyler Buckner was making his first start when they went to Ohio Stadium. It was fairly conservative, but they had a good defense. This defense is even better. Now, they'll face a pretty good quarterback, not a great quarterback. People have a lot of thoughts on him and, Carson Beck. And essentially, like once Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers were gone from that, from playing with Carson Beck 2 years ago, he didn't look nearly the same last year, did he? And I don't think that he's going to have McConkey and Bowers playing with him at Miami. He'll have some decent receivers, but I don't think he's going to have anything in that ballpark. We got to take a timeout. We come back. We'll touch on the scrimmage a little bit. We'll some more conversation on the quarterback when we return. We continue Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. I'm Sean Stiers along with Jesse Stiers this afternoon. Got a lot to get to in rapid fire in the second hour. We got a full hour, the second hour of the show tonight. We're going to get into the ridiculousness of the Big Ten's latest college football playoff expansion idea. We've also got comments from both coordinators, Mike Denbrock and Chris Ash, offense and defense, and Christian Gray as well. We've got a ton, and we're going to talk about the captains. Notre Dame named 6 captains today, so all of that is coming up in rapid fire in the second hour of the show tonight. Did you get a chance, Jess, to watch the 32-second highlight clip from yesterday's scrimmage that Fighting Irish Media posted today?
I did watch that 32-second clip that they posted and you sent to me and said, can you please watch this?
Before we get to that, I just thought about this. A lot of people watched Marcus Freeman's press conference on YouTube yesterday and thought that he just looked exhausted and worn out and, all these different things. What did you think of his demeanor from the press conference?
I want to say this in the most politically way correct. I've been thinking about how to say this for a while.
Doesn't sound like your mindless chit chat. Go ahead.
No, that's offensive. A bit rudeness on the side. I think it sounds like a coach that is mulling over a tough decision, and the outside media fans are starting to let him hear about it. And I think as much as everyone else, he would love to make that decision and have it over with so the team can move on and prepare for week 1 against Miami. It feels like a head coach who understands the gravity of the situation, and a situation that has obviously been weighing on him for probably a good 2 weeks, like heavily weighing on him.
Yeah, I mean, he knew he was going to get the questions. Someone had to bite the bullet and ask him, and that did happen. And again, he fielded a lot of questions about the quarterbacks, but I didn't think he looked any different than any other time he's come off the field. Like after a win, he's obviously going to be in a little bit better mood, but when you're out there, it's hot. You're going through this scrimmage. There, all these different things as the head coach, in that 2 hours that you're outside in the stadium going through this scrimmage on the sidelines, there are a million different things that are going through your head. And so I didn't think he looked that much different than any other time he's come off the field in similar settings and stood in front of the microphone and answered questions like that. It didn't stand out to me, I guess, the way that it did to some other people. But when you add on the fact that he does still have to make this decision, I think that maybe some of that was there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say your opinion should be weighed more heavily because you see Marcus Freeman and interact with Marcus Freeman on a more consistent basis than probably anyone else here.
So as to the scrimmage and the highlight video, we haven't got a ton. Again, 32 seconds. Did notice Jerome Bettis Sr. and Bryant Young casually hanging out on the sidelines, watching their sons out there. I mean, we saw a little bit of everything. It was noteworthy that in past highlight videos they've put out, they've kind of like hidden like which quarterback was making the successful plays or whatever, but they showed each of them, making some nice throws. The throw from CJ Carr to Malachi Fields was a pretty nice one.
If we want to get nitpicky, CJ Carr's throw was better than Kenny Minchey's.
I thought so. There's a little bit more degree of difficulty. It looked like the throw when Minchey hit KK Smith, it looked like Smith was, like wide open on that
little underthrown
play. Yeah.
He
Jabron
hit
James. What's that?
Sorry, he just hit Fields on a nice kind of over the back shoulder defender on him.
Yeah.
Type throw.
Again, the kind of throw that Carr has more confidence in, even like when there is a defender there. But again, maybe that's something that can get him into trouble a little bit. Again, going back to the throw he was trying to make on the deep post in the blue gold game to Saldata, when he was intercepted on that play, maybe those kind of things, and like the deep center field throw on day one of training camp and those kind of things. But those are the kind of throws, the one that you're talking about in that highlight video to Malachi Fields, that we see Carr make, many more of in comparison to Kenny Minchey, as we're comparing the two. Decisions got to be made here pretty soon. Did you like, by the way, speaking of Bryant Young, did you see the Bryce Young going up against Anthony Knapp matchup there, defensive end and left tackle?
I'm going to be honest with you. I was so locked in on everything offensive side of the ball.
All right.
I'm just being honest with you.
Good enough.
That when I was watching that video, I was trying to figure out I saw the highlight of Jeremiah Love catching a ball out of the backfield. I thought that was significant.
I did too.
Looking at some of the releases. I was seeing if the offense got in the end zone a couple times. They did do that a couple times, so I felt good about seeing the offensive cross the line, especially when they showed kind of those turnovers, I think, earlier on before some of the offensive scores. To me, the defense is going to take care of business. I just need to see what Chris Ash does in game, what kind of adjustments he's going to make, and probably his kind of play style calling in terms of when he wants to blitz and when he doesn't want to blitz. Defense is going to be a top 10 unit in the country. What's going to win them a national championship is what the offense does and doesn't do.
Lights out all camp long from everything that we've heard. And, again, I think it's made this decision at the quarterback position that much tougher for Freeman, Denbrock, Gaduli. We will hear from Mike Denbrock and Chris Ash and Christian Gray. We will talk Notre Dame captains that they named today. We will talk the ridiculousness coming out of the Big Ten. We will do all that and more in rapid fire in hour 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Hope you're having a great day today. And since it is the second hour of Budweiser's weekday sports beat, that can mean only one thing. Ready for rapid fire, Jesse?
I am ready. We spent a lot of time talking about QBs. I'm sure we're going to talk about QBs more, but there's also relevant topics to get to today.
There are many. And when I was doing the tease the last hour, I forgot about the Steve Angeli news out of Syracuse today. So we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. First, though, we have more Notre Dame football quarterback conversation. You look like you just saw something. Did you have something?
No, it's just another program announced their starter today.
Notre Dame, obviously this doesn't include Syracuse. Notre Dame is the only top 10 AP top 10 team in the nation that is yet to name a starting quarterback.
Interesting.
Enough. So we heard a lot from Marcus Freeman in the quarterback competition between Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr in hour 1 of the show. We talked to Mike Denbrock, Notre Dame's offensive coordinator, yesterday as well. He was asked if the two quarterbacks are going to still split their reps 50-50 until a starter is named.
I mean, advantage, disadvantage. I'm not sure about that part. You know what I mean? But yeah, it'll be kind of the same it's been. You know, we've had a long stretch here where we've been able to give each guy pretty close to the same amount of reps, and until the decision is final and we make it, that'll continue.
All right, so that will continue. You good with that, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, if we're in the true spirit of a competition and, no one knows yet, then of course, got to keep splitting it up day by day until that starter is announced. Because as soon as you give one guy, 52 reps and the other guy 48 reps, the media is immediately going to come knocking and say, hey, you gave CJ Carr more reps today.
More reps.
Does that mean he's the starter? What? There's always a sign, right? Like everything's, especially for me, I'm guilty of this 100%. Everything's a sign, right? Like I walk down the road and I see a penny on the ground. That's a sign. That means I need to do something special, right? Like that's kind of where I'm at.
In other words, you're superstitious. That's what.
Yeah, 100%.
I think I used to be more superstitious when I was younger, and just older I've gotten, the more that stuff has just gone out the window. I mean, again, I think it's completely fine. 50-50 reps. I mean, if you haven't made a decision, you can't give one more than the other because you're still trying to figure it out, obviously. So I've got no problem continuing to split the reps until they figure it out. But the thing is, as we said, tomorrow, based on what Marcus Freeman said, tomorrow begins specific Miami prep. And it just feels like with 12 days to go as of tomorrow, the closer you get, you've got to make that decision. One of them has to start, whoever the starter is, has to start getting, more reps than whoever the number 2 guy is going to be. But that also begs the question, how much longer can they go before they name a number 1 who starts getting the majority of the snaps?
One day. I think one more day is honestly where I'm at. I just did a little research.
Ooh.
A lot of teams are like, again, you can only compare yourself to the standard, and the standard is winning a national championship. Who's won the most recent national championship? Ohio State. They named their captains yesterday, and they named their starter today, right? So technically, if Notre Dame named their starter right now, they'd just be on pace with the standard. Notre Dame named their captains today. I hope that they follow suit and they name their starter tomorrow. Because again, I don't care who the starter is, and I don't care what it means. I just want the starter to be announced for the team's sake. I want the team to be in the best.
Named.
Yes, named.
Not announced.
I want,
because like I think somebody brought, Scott mentioned the first, or Tommy, like there's a difference between naming and announcing.
correct.
Like, they can name it to the team, versus announcing it publicly, right?
Correct.
Just to clarify.
But the implications that it has on the team, I want them getting ready for, again, this is arguably one of their top 3 games this entire season. You have to start getting into game week mindset, preparation, and getting your young quarterback, whoever it is, mentally prepared to be a starter on the road in a big environment.
See, Werewolf says the team knows by now, so who cares? I mean, if it's really as close as everyone is saying, which by all accounts it is, based on things we've heard, things they've said publicly, the coaches, things they haven't said publicly, like it is a very close competition, and each one has its own strength. So I don't know that it's necessarily obvious to the team. I like the way it sounds. You could go with either guy and you'd have a really good quarterback. It's just the subtle differences between the two that are going to be the big difference. And to your point, like I agree with what you're saying. They can't go much longer until they at least internally name the starting quarterback. So he, whether it's a 60-40 split or, 70-30 or whatever, they have to start preparing whoever is going to be the starter as the starter and wrap the main part of the game plan around him. And if there is a package for the other guy, that's fine. Whatever situations they deem he would be best suited for, because other people have talked about, well, Wimbush and Book and, like these different guys where you have seen two different guys. There's a difference, going back to what we were talking about in the first hour of the show, there's a difference between having a package like Tyler Buckner had when Jack Cohn was the starting quarterback and going with just a full splitting reps between both guys. I think there's a big difference between that.
Two things. If the team knows it is going to get leaked, someone's going to tell a friend, who's going to tell a cousin, who's going to tell their mom, who's going to tell their sister.
Well, I mean, they were already
it's all
leaked,
over the place.
But they turned out not to, necessarily. Maybe the leaks are what pumped the brakes on actually naming the starting quarterback.
And if the team knows, then Marcus Freeman's a liar because he got up there Sunday and said a decision hasn't been made.
But every coach will. I think liar might be a little bit strong. He's at least protected the information, in the right way to his benefit, right? Because it's to his team's benefit at this point. Because like you were saying earlier, there's no film on either way. Like Notre Dame is one of the few teams that was willing to have their spring game broadcast nationally. There were the Nebraskas and LSUs and USCs of the world who were afraid to do that. But Marcus Freeman and the Irish weren't afraid to put their spring game on TV. So people have at least been able to see a little bit from a few months back the differences between Kenny Minchey and CJ Carr.
I think people are getting confused like I care. I don't care. You're just starting to tread in water where things can start to go south quickly.
Right.
That's all I'm afraid of.
And to clarify, because there was a question that came up yesterday when Mike Denbrock was up there, to clarify, both of the quarterbacks had reps as the number one quarterback during the scrimmage yesterday. Because as Mike Denbrock said, I don't have the cut right here, but as Mike Denbrock said, it was offense against defense. So whoever you put on the field was essentially the number one guy. They were mixing and matching, so they were both taking number one reps out there. There wasn't one guy getting one rep, number one reps, one guy getting number twos. They were both getting number one reps during the scrimmage yesterday because it was a live scrimmage and the Jersey scrimmage. I am Tenzin. I'm the son of Ang. Says, too much quarterback talk on the big show today. We need more defensive talk. We're going to slip some of that in here in just a minute. Jesse?
I don't want to – I know we got to keep moving, but just humor me here for a second. Humor me.
You're going to grind this thing to a halt here? What are you going to do?
If Brian Kelly were the head coach right now and this is the exact same situation, would we be having the same dialogue right now? Just yes or no.
And would we be having the same dialogue as
yes? Like, would there be as much forgiveness?
We had a lot of dialogue. So yeah, like I think we would be much more impatient with Brian Kelly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I wanted.
I mean, that's noteworthy as well, because this is the first time Marcus Freeman has really had to go through this in his career. This is the first, because again, you can go back to Buckner and Pine in year one, but at the day, they declared Buckner the starter within a week of camp. Like that's most of these competitions, they've named the starter relatively quickly. And it just kind of magnifies the fact that this is a true quarterback competition. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Steve Angeli has been named the starting quarterback at Syracuse.
It's a massive egg on my face, everyone. And I'll be the first to say, hey, hand up right here. This guy said he couldn't make it to a MAC. This guy said that he should stick to a MAC. I said Power 5 was never an option. And if he did make it to a Power 5, there's no way he'd be a starter. I'll eat it all. I'll eat all of my words. I'll man up and be the first one to admit I was wrong. I hope that this means something good for Steve Angeli. I hope that this, gives him the opportunity that I think he deserves. But most importantly, I think that this should reassure Notre Dame fans, because if they got rid of a guy who could be a Power 5 starter in the Big Ten, it should tell you how they feel about CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey.
I almost forgot to include this on the rundown today, and then I remembered with you being in here with me for Rapid Fire that we had to make sure, and Daniel in the YouTube chat giving you props for the accountability. Good on you. And what it really means now is, when are you going to pay this bet to Vince and I? You were in town for a week last week. I noticed you never offered, hey, Dad, would you like maybe some Chipotle, or what? Could I order you something? Not once in the week that you were in town did anything like that come up on the bet, because the bet was you would owe both Vince and I dinner if Angeli ended up being the starting quarterback. And here he is. Congratulations to Steve Angeli. So good on him. He's made his way. But this also shows just how good this quarterback room is at Notre Dame. The fact that Steve Angeli went to another Power 4 program, beat out a guy who transferred from LSU, who was making some good NIL money of his own to go from LSU to Syracuse, and ended up winning the job. So I think that it's great for Steve Angeli, but it's also great because it shows just how good the two quarterbacks who are still here at Notre Dame really are.
Listen, I just got my IRS money finally. If you and Vince are, getting hungry and want to use the thing is these are type of situations where you should really redeem it when it matters. You shouldn't just use it for any old situation. You should be craving a pizza. Maybe you've had a bad week of work. Maybe Notre Dame let you down and you just want a nice, big old greasy pizza. Maybe Vince got yelled at by the wife, forgot to get dinner. And it's like, You know what? Jesse still owes me a quick one. Maybe I can call him and we can, you know what I mean? Like, don't just use it to use it. Make it situational.
Okay. All right.
But no, I'm good for it. At any point you call, I'm there. You guys just let me know.
Here's a service that I need. Like, they have DoorDash. What they need is airline gate dash. So when I land in Dallas, I don't have to go looking for barbecue when I land at the airport in Dallas when I'm on my way to Miami next week. Someone walks up to me with gate dash and hands me my barbecue. I think that maybe that's what you need to figure out as like how you can accomplish that, to have barbecue hand delivered to me once I arrive.
Naomi was just in Kansas City, so having Kansas City Joe's probably would have been the answer in this scenario, but I didn't even get any of it. So
yeah, fair enough. So Notre Dame named their 6 captains today: Adon Schuler, Billy Schrouth, Will Pauling, Drake Bowen, Emil Wagner, Donovan Heinisch. What do you think? Any surprises in these captains announced today?
So I was trying to do some recollection. I want to say, and I always tell people to write these down, but I'm pretty sure I was good on Adon Schuler. I was good on Billy Schrouth. I was good on Drake Bowen. I was good on Emil Wagner. And I want to say I was even good on Donovan Heinisch as kind of like a wild card. I might have to go rewatch the show. Will Pauling surprises me, but after hearing about his work ethic and kind of who he is as a man, I'm no longer surprised about it. Yeah. I would say my only letdown is I wanted the offensive skill guy to be homegrown. I didn't want it to be, I don't have a problem with it being Will Pauling, but I wanted it to be maybe Jeremiah Love or Jaden Greathouse or a career Notre Dame guy. That was maybe my only gripe.
But you do hear great things about Will Pauling and the leadership and, like what he did at Wisconsin and, the work ethic that he's got and everything, as you said, I'm not surprised. Magnetic therapy bracelets in the YouTube chat says, why wasn't Love selected captain? Well, the team voted, and these are the guys the team voted for. So you can't fault the team for who they voted for. These are who they voted for. You can only vote for so many guys. And, that's just the way it goes. Not everybody can end up being a captain. Vince and I did make our final picks last week, and I did not. The only two on this list I didn't have were Wagner and Heinisch. I had the other four guys: Schuler, Schrouth, Pauling, Bowen. As we kind of went through some other guys, felt like Greathouse had an opportunity. I did have Jeremiah Love as one of my picks. He didn't.
Don't you have to self-nominate and then the team votes after the self-nomination?
Yeah, you get up in front of the team, you self-nominate, you tell people why you want to be a captain.
I don't think Love self-nominated himself.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. Maybe he didn't. Irish Gordian Knott says, I need to message him and he could legitimately walk me through how to accomplish my barbecue at the gate mission when I get to Dallas. So thank you very much for that. Carlos says, you get me the terminal and I'll get you some good Texas barbecue. I will. I know it's American Airlines. I don't know where, which gate I'll be coming into, Carlos, but if you were there, we will meet up and we will make that happen. I think I have an hour and a half layover in between if everything's on time.
I like to hear that. The last time I was in the Dallas airport, I was able to find some you know what? People are going to make some jokes, but I was able to find some Cowboys gear at a nice discount.
All right. Let's take a timeout. More rapid fire when we continue. We've got some comments from Christian Gray. He talked a little bit about the national championship game. We're also going to talk about this Big Ten college football playoff expansion proposal. We've also got some stuff from Notre Dame defensive coordinator Chris Ash as we do work some defensive talk into this show as well. It's all coming up. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com continues. It's rapid fire. I want to make sure and get this Big Ten proposal in before we talk some more Notre Dame stuff, Jesse, because I don't want to run out of time and not have time to talk about the idiocy of this whole thing. First, a couple super chats in the YouTube. Thank you very much, Daniel. He says, for one of Vince's kids' meals, he sends us a little cash for that. And Swang Dong says he's wearing Cowboys gear in his YouTube picture. Really classy, Swang Dong. Then Irish Gordianot says, I don't know why, but it would be cool if Sean was smoking a stogie during the breaks. I think that's because I forgot to put the cover screen up when I was sitting here. I got a chuckle out of that, and then I looked and I was like, oh, I'm still on screen. I better put the cover page up. Okay, so we need to talk about the Big Ten's latest college football playoff expansion proposal. Commissioner Tony Petitti has floated another idea out there of growing the field to either 24 or 28 teams. Here are some of the details for the 28 team proposed for. It's not an official proposal yet, but they would eliminate conference championship games. Big Ten and SEC would each get 7 auto bids. ACC, Big 12 each get 5 auto bids. There would be 2 auto bids for group of 6 teams, the 2 best group of 6 teams. That would leave 2 at-large bids, like where Notre Dame would slot in. And there would also be 20 on-campus playoff games. The playoff committee would seed the field and pick the at-large teams. That's a 28-team proposal by the Big Ten. Does any of this appeal to you on any level?
The only thing that appeals to me is having more on-campus playoff games. The rest of it, you can do what I'm about to do to this Kyle Tucker card. You can light it on fire.
You're that happy with him right now, huh?
Something's got to happen. I need like a sacrificial cleansing or something. I just need to light it on fire, and hopefully his season will turn around. But no, to be honest with you, it's the thing is it's the same format. It just amplifies because the ratio stays the same. The Big Ten and the SEC want half the field basically. And that's no matter what the format is. So they keep basically saying, well, let's just keep adding more teams. And then, we'll keep maybe getting our ratio up where we get 50%. Yeah, we'll get 50% of the field. And, that's more money for the Big Ten and the SEC because that's more, highly anticipated viewers for a lot of these games. I'm going to be honest with you. I would rather trend to less teams than I would more teams. It's all fat at the end of the day that can be trimmed off because in college football, you can't tell me once you get outside the top 8 or 10, we all know what the best teams in the country are, right? Like it's just excess games at that point that you're just playing to generate more revenue. In a perfect world, there'd be an 8-team playoff, no first round buys. You play 8 games, and then you play till you get down to a championship, and that's it. That's just my opinion on it. I think the more you add, you're not really worried about quality of football. You're worried about revenue of football at that point.
Tony Petitti and the Big Ten just need to speak when spoken to at this point. That's what it comes down to. It's just like, stop talking, because this is just ridiculousness now. As you expand the playoff, you should not need more guaranteed spots in the playoff. You shouldn't get more auto bids if you're going to expand it. It should actually be the other way around because
Correct.
You've expanded it. You're proposing to expand it to the point of ridiculousness at this point. You should not get 7 auto bids if the field is going to be 28. If anything, you should just say you get 2. Each conference gets 2 auto bids. Everything else is at large after that. Like, you shouldn't need to keep doing this. But again, this goes back to, like he's talking about getting rid of the conference championship games. Do you know why he's willing to get rid of the conference championship games? It's the same thing that he wants with his 16-team, expanded playoff field that he's been talking about. He wants to stage the play-in games. And by staging the play-in games, he's giving content to his TV partners. And we all know that TV drives so much of this to begin with. That's like everything comes back to that for Tony Petitti in the Big Ten. He's trying to make his TV partners happy and get more revenue for his conference at the same time, because more games on TV and more home playoff games, that's more money for everybody, right? But you shouldn't need the auto bids. But again, he can't have the play-in games if he's not getting automatic bids once those games are played. And he sees these things tied together. That's why he keeps pushing this garbage. And, you know, like to your point about watering it down. So again, ACC and the Big 12 would get 5 auto bids out of this thing if it ever happened. The number 5 team in the ACC last year, Louisville, 9-4. That's obviously after a bowl game. Number 5 team in the Big 12, Baylor, 8-5. Number 7 team in the Big 10, Michigan and Minnesota tied for 7th. They were both 8-5. Texas A&M in the SEC, 7th place team, 8-5. Are those the kind of teams that we want in a playoff? Do we want 9, do we want 4 and 5 loss teams in the college football playoff? That's not what it's supposed to be about. It's just past the point of ridiculousness. But Tony Petitti only wants to serve himself and the Big Ten, the Big Ten's constituents. That's what all of this is about, is trying to serve him and his TV partners. So it's like, yeah, more on-campus playoff games would be cool, but we don't need to swell the college football playoff to 28 teams to get to that. I think it's ridiculous.
I mean, let's look at the first round games of even this most recent playoff. Ohio State beat Tennessee 42-17. Texas beat Clemson 38-24. Penn State beat SMU 38-10. Notre Dame was basically beating IU 27-3, and IU, got those last kind of touchdowns in when it really didn't matter. Are we really saying, outside of just, it was awesome, Notre Dame got to play on campus and host that playoff game, but outside of that, what did those first round of games really provide? It was just the trimming of the fat. So the more teams you add, we're talking about potentially seeing like 50-10 type games, or 40-3 type games. We all know what the result is going to be 19 out of 20 times.
Correct. John getting in a little bit late. We just talked about Steve Angeli starting for Syracuse. Congratulations to him as he becomes is named the Syracuse starting quarterback today. Notre Dame still waiting, trying to decide who their starting quarterback is going to be. Donald says he just joined. What did Jesse say about Angeli being QB1 at Syracuse? He said he ate his words because he knows that he was wrong. Capital W. Connor Grant, does NIL factor into the quarterback decision? Is Carr making more than Kenny? No, NIL does not factor into the quarterback decision. They're both making good NIL money. One might be making more than the other one, but that's not coming out direct. That's not coming out of Notre Dame's pockets, what they're making in NIL. That is for, collectives and like the sponsors and everything else. So that is not a factor in who ends up being the starting quarterback. It is all about what happens on the field, because those guys are going to make their money regardless if they're like, once they have an NIL deal, they're making that money whether they're number 1 or number 5 on the depth chart. So, they're on the roster. So that has nothing to do with it. So we talked with Fighting Irish cornerback Christian Gray recently. He was asked if he's ever gone back and watched film of the decisive play against Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, which happened, of course, at the end of last year's national championship game, and if there's anything he could have done differently. Here is Christian Gray's answer to that.
I do watch over it. I watch over some messed up tape. I go over it with just by myself sometimes. And I watched that play. I definitely would have said that I should have just really not let him get on my toes. He's closed space as far as he could. I was just trying to protect my leverage, and all I could definitely say is that I should just open up the turn as quick as possible as I could. So that's why from there on. So yeah.
Is it a big motivator for you?
using that, watching it like that?
Oh yeah, it's a big motivator for sure. I'll definitely say that. But then I also would say like it's not the end of the world for your life. You know what I mean? I know it was a big game. It was a big emotional for everybody and everything. And all I can say like to myself, I had a little problem with it, of course. But I definitely say it's a huge motivator. To be better, strive for better, do something for better. You know what I mean? Like, and so I definitely say like that play just told me what this game is. You know what I mean? It's just one play, reload, make yourself better, keep going, keep working hard, and then you'll be better. So yeah.
Jesse, that response from Christian Gray about the Jeremiah Smith play from the national championship game is blank.
I would say pretty typical, to be honest with you. It didn't feel like he said too much or too little. I think that, you like to hear the mindset of, it's just one play, but kind of hearing him talk about it, to me, it sounds like there really was nothing more that he could have done in that play, right? You were just going against one of the best wide receivers in the country. And sometimes, great players make great plays, unfortunately, right? But he had to be kind of on the receiving end of that. So rather than dwell on it, I think it's a bigger opportunity for growth, and something that you cannot kind of always come back to of, this was the biggest moment probably to date in my career. So, nothing at this point should be able to break him, I think is really what you can take away from it, because, he it's not even that he made a mistake, there's, again, the better player, I think, made a great play in that situation.
Yeah, and they designed something specifically, to see if they could get what they wanted, and they got it. I agree with what Beef Feeder ND08 says in the YouTube chat. That is what character sounds like. He owned it, and he knows that it was a mistake, but like every play, or every game, like no one plays a perfect game. Tom Brady threw a lot of interceptions in his career for every championship that he won, like JJ Watt, tons of sacks in his career, but there were also plenty of other plays that he didn't make. Name your player. And if you're a cornerback, you've got to have a short memory. And I like how he didn't shy away from it. He talked, even about the fact that there was a little bit of controversy afterwards, and like things happened afterwards, but he sat there, he owned up to it. And I think it's interesting when you think about it. Christian Gray was 19 years old when that play happened. Like, think about that. 19 years old, that kind of spotlight, and like Jeremiah Smith, for that matter, was probably 18 when it happened. So like, you're talking about a couple of, really young guys who were both very talented and, still with so much in front of them and so much upside as well. Because I always go back to, okay, that play might have gone against Christian Gray, but he still made probably the two biggest interceptions of the season for Notre Dame. Definitely in the Orange Bowl in the Penn State game. Not an easy play that he made on that diving interception on Drew Aller to set up the game-winning field goal. And then against USC as well with the pick six and the pivot that he made to stay on his feet and take it back the other way. Arguably the two biggest, plays that they made. Josh says, where was the safety help on that? Well, it was up at the line of scrimmage because they were blitzing. They were all out blitzing on that play. And, let's be honest, as great as Al Golden was, and he won the Frank Broyles Award last year, eerily similar to some extent to the double safety blitz that he made at the end of the Ohio State game in the regular season in game one of Marcus Freeman's tenure as well. We've got to take one more short timeout because we have a show loaded with breaks tonight. We will do that, and then we'll come back and we will wrap up with some comments from Chris Ash as Rapid Fire and the show concludes tonight on WSBT. Winding down Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire. So I wanted to get in a couple comments from Chris Ash, Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, before we wrap up. We will get at least one of them, and I think we've got time for a couple of them. One of the hot topics surrounding Ash as he comes into Notre Dame is where he's going to be on game day. Will he coach from the press box or down on the field? Well, he answered that question yesterday.
I'm going to be downstairs. There's really no particular reason. It's just when I look at the makeup of the staff and all that, I think it's best for me to be down on the sideline. I've done both. I've been in the box. I've been on the sideline. Been more on the sideline here recently. But really, it's about what I think is best for the staff and the players.
All right, so he's going to be down on the field. Does it really matter, Jess?
Yes, it does matter.
Ooh, okay. So where would you rather? I mean,
he made the right decision.
You think down on the field is the place to be?
Yes.
Okay.
You're, in my opinion, and I think that this is on. I think this is honestly different per coordinator. I'd rather have my OC up in the box, and I'd rather have my DC down on the field. I think defensive coordinators need to be in the trenches with their players. They need to understand what's going on. And then I think more so defensively, you're making more changes based off of what you see and the feedback you get from your players coming off the field. You don't need to be communicating all that through headsets, through players, through coordinators. Everyone gets in a huddle on the sideline. You circle around. We get a board out. We start talking about what we're seeing, what adjustments we need to make, that sort of stuff. I just think that communication process and getting a result in game is so much easier when you're on the field on the defensive side of the ball.
Okay. I like it. Come over, get the immediate feedback. You got the boss right there.
Everyone's communicating. You're not, again, It's not headsets. Everyone's face to face. Everyone's kind of, again, we're just hashing out what we're seeing. What are we going to do to fix it? That sort of situation. When you start talking, it's like, well, who's talking? Are you sure this is what you're seeing? Like, I just think you can gauge everything that's going on so much easier when you're on the sidelines.
Yeah, and I mean, you can have whoever you want up in the press box, if like looking at specific things formation-wise and all those different things, who can communicate different things to you. But I agree. I think the direct level of communication on the sideline is generally the best way to go. So good answer. Good response. I like it. So Chris Ash is going to be on the sideline on game day. He was also asked about the depth of his defense and how it compares to some other places that he has coached.
To be honest with you, the only place that probably would be comparable was when I went to Ohio State in 2014. There were a lot of really good players there, very similar to this situation here. People can say a lot of things about me, but I'm not dumb. If I was going to take this job, it was because we had some pretty good players, and we do.
I feel like he was throwing some shade at you there with that comment, Jesse.
I love that comment. I wouldn't seriously, what guy wants to walk into a crappy defensive coordinator position, especially knowing kind of what they were just able to accomplish in the prior years, right? So
right. And I mean, it's pretty scary when you look at this, because we're going to hear some more comments from Chris Ash and Mike Denbrock on tomorrow's show about some different topics. We're obviously very quarterback heavy, very quarterback focused today for good reason, because of the fact that, they haven't named a starter yet. And people are like, what are they going to do? And all that different stuff. But they were talking about Dallas Golden yesterday and Mark Zachary yesterday and all these young guys and the kind of depth that they give, like the safeties, they're still sorting through who's going to be the safety to play next to a Don Schuler. And both Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash spoke, pretty glowingly about those four safeties who, not named a Don Schuler, who we're going to see this season. And so many of them are young guys. There is just so much depth on this team. And that secondary is just going to be a beast this year. And I think that is part of what, like you were going back when we were talking about Miami earlier and like how they're going to, hang with Miami. I think it is going to be a real challenge for Carson Beck on August 31st when they go up against this Notre Dame secondary.
Couple thoughts. First thought, agree. But a guy that I follow that is heavy into analytics and someone's opinion that I respect very, very much has Miami as the most, I don't even know why I'm trying to say it like this. It is the highest rated offense in his analytics, more so than Alabama, more so than Ohio State, Texas. He has Miami as the top offense in the country. I'm sure Carson Beck plays into that, but we won't know until we know. I think Miami's going to have a lot of firepower. I think Notre Dame's defense is going to have a lot of firepower. But to kind of wrap this thing up, and I want everyone to listen real close here. Marcus Freeman has created so much depth here. That's the reason why Notre Dame has turned the corner. They're not just great at the ones anymore. They're great 1 through 2 and potentially all the way 1 through 3. So listen loud and clear here. At the end of the day, I have no other choice but to listen and respect what Coach Marcus Freeman does and decides. If he wants to decide now, if he wants to decide it's Kenny Minchey, if he wants to decide it's CJ Carr, I don't care. He's proven it himself. He has taken this program to higher places in the last 30 years, 40 years than any other coach. So
you're giving him the benefit of the doubt now, because that didn't seem like what you were doing in the first hour of the show.
I have no choice. I have no choice. When has he proved me wrong?
Okay. All right.
I just want people to understand the repercussions that can come from it. That's it.
All right. Do you think when we saddle up tomorrow, are we going to know who the starting quarterback is?
Yes.
You think we will?
By the time this show starts tomorrow, you and Vince will be talking about who the starting quarterback is. Tomorrow starts Miami week. We'll know who the quarterback is.
Tommy is telling you that you're going back on what you were talking about earlier. All right, we're going to wrap it up with that. Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers, thanks for being here. Appreciate you as always. Those who watch in the YouTube chat, of course, those who listen either live or in podcast form. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.
Go Irish.